What is up, guys? Matt McKeever here. So first, I had to do that slurp just to really honor Steven Crowder. So if you guys haven't been following along, he actually was just banned for a week from YouTube, and his channel was demonetized and a bunch of other shenanigans. He's been banned on and off from Twitter for an extended period of time. So what I did want to share with everyone today is just, I really want to encourage you guys to go and actually support Crowder and his mug club. So literally, there it is up on the screen right there. I'm clearly a supporter of the Mug Club myself, and really want to encourage you guys to support him. I think he's doing some cool stuff. You may or may not agree with all of his politics or all of his perspectives, but I think he's got a valid voice. I think he's a voice that's often focused on facts or data versus drama for the most part. So again, I think he's a valuable narrative to this conversation that's going on right now that is 21st or 2021 America, or whatever it is right now, during the COVID era of politics. But in essence, I really want to encourage you guys to go support him. I watch his show and Dave Rubin's on the Blaze regularly, so I really do get value from it. Straight up, the Blaze is probably the second, maybe the first most watched network I actually consume content from right now. So actually, it probably is. I probably literally watch more content in a week on the Blaze watching Steven Crowder and Dave Rubin. Then I watch Netflix or Amazon Prime. Those are probably my number twos. And then YouTube is probably like a fourth place for me, where before, when I could consistently watch all of his content, he was, that was part of my YouTube consumption. So I could regularly consume that. And then speaking about YouTube bans, I figured why not talk about another YouTuber that was recently banned. So I want to promote Mark from Canada Poly. And I've actually never asked if it's Poly or Poly. I think I could pronounce it either way. But essentially, you can see here he was recently banned, but he does post all his shows here in the comments. In his forum. So I want to encourage you guys to go jump over. You can watch him on Rumble or BitChute as well. So I'm regularly watching him on BitChute, I think. So really want to encourage you guys to jump over and, check out what Mark's doing there as well. So anyways, just really important to support these people. And I think both of them have very valid perspectives and are adding to the narratives respectively in their countries. So Crowder's obviously really representing America, and Mark is kind of a Canadian version of that. But anyways, I really think it's important to support these individuals. I want to encourage you guys to go support it. I'd literally rather than see a YouTube super chat for me, I'd rather go see someone go and subscribe to the Blaze for a year. So I think it's important, guys. I think it's really unfortunate what's going on. And there's a lot less agency just in day-to-day conversations. Big tech's a concern of mine. And so that's one of the things that I'm starting to become more and more bullish on Bitcoin. And that's what I want to explore in today's show. So specifically, I think we're going to mainly chat about Bitcoin. But so we've got my buddy Tim, who's going to be joining us. So I'm going to be multitasking here. So I'm talking to you guys. I'm finding where my mouse is. I'm scrolling. I'm pulling this off. Okay, here we go. There's Tim. Hey, Tim, how's it going?
Great. Thanks, Matt. How are you?
Good. So a couple things I want to jump into. And then if you've got some stories to talk about in regards to Bitcoin or crypto, really looking forward to exploring those as well. But I guess the first one I want to chat about was just in general, this concept of being very bullish. So, when I hear, and like, I'm obsessed right now. So I've had a few fans DM me and say like, I always see you in Clubhouse in those Bitcoin chats. And I'm like, yep, I pretty much, if I don't have to have something else on audioly, it's going to be one of those chats, because I'm just curious to get the perspectives in those communities. And, regularly I'll see titles on some of those group chats of things like, if you own shares, you don't own enough Bitcoin. And so full disclosure right now, I am sitting on a chair. So obviously I don't own enough Bitcoin. But that kind of leads into a conversation. So Brad Mills is a really well-known, tech entrepreneur, Bitcoin, magical internet money podcast, all that stuff. And he's also a Londoner. And so recently he had a great post in his Twitter where he asked a question. I was kind of surprised by the direction. So full disclosure, I thought that everyone was going to tell him he needed to go 100% all in on Bitcoin, because I just assumed that was going to be the bias of his community. But For anyone that can't read, the tweet reads, I paid off my mortgage in 2018 thanks to Bitcoin. Since rates are so low and the money printer has to keep going, I should remortgaging at these low rates and buy BTC with it. It's kind of like a personal Michael Saylor style debt offering. Is this move Giga Chad or Nano Brad? And just when I think of Giga Chad, I can't help but think of Beeple's Elon Musk here, which I believe this was titled Nano Chat Nano or Giga Chad, sorry. But anyways, thought that was hilarious. But wanted to kind of explore your thoughts in this entire perspective because, again, there's a lot of chats where people are talking very aggressively and bullishly. I think some of them are literally like they're trying to get paid in Bitcoin. They're really trying to completely remove themselves from the existing financial system. And I think there's other people that are just viewing this as an investment or another asset class. And again, it's interesting to me because I'm so comfortable as a real estate investor with debt that like the idea of not having debt on my principal residence feels risky almost to me, if that makes sense. And yet I also understand 10 years ago when I got into personal finances, I was all about pay that mortgage off as fast as possible. You know, I went on weekly payments for my mortgage and double payments. And I ended up like essentially paying off my mortgage almost in 10 years versus the 20 that it was originally amortized on. So I'd like to think that I understand both sides of the perspective, but it was just interesting. So what are your general thoughts, I guess, on all this?
Yeah, Brad is a great guy. He got me into Bitcoin in 2016. He was the first person that really provided me an opportunity to like learn about it or take it seriously and sent me my first transaction. So I've got a lot of respect for the guy. I mean, I don't think this is prudent. And again, he's a guy that understands Bitcoin better than almost anybody. Yeah. And he's an entrepreneurial guy in that I'm sure has other streams of income and has other assets. I mean, I don't think this is a good example for folks who are new to the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin space. But you know, to take money at 1.5% to buy an asset that's been appreciating at 200% compounding year after year for the last 11 years, it seems like a pretty easy bet as long as you have enough cushion, whether that's your LTV on the loan or whether you've got other cash flow to cover the mortgage. I'm definitely not one of these people that is against debt as like a moral objection, but I do think that the strategy he's proposing is only for experts and advanced players because, you know, how do you explain to somebody that you lost your house because Bitcoin crashed and you couldn't make the mortgage payments? That's not going to be a good thing. But you know, in the last bull run in 2017, there was a very famous Reddit post of a guy that sold his house. That he mortgaged his house, bought Bitcoin, and 10x'd it in a period of months. Never mind years. So, other than understanding the cyclical nature of the Bitcoin price, it looks like now's the time to do it if it wasn't 6 months ago. And then we'll see where we're at in 12 months.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you sharing that. And again, being very clear, not trying to throw any shade at Brad, but I think it is just an interesting conversation. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts in the comment section as well. So those of you that are bullish on cryptocurrency, those of you that are maybe bullish specifically on Bitcoin, is that something that you would consider doing if you had a fully paid off house? Because again, it's very easy to speculate from the sidelines. A lot of people, I think, if they're passionate about Bitcoin, they'd say, obviously I would do that if I was in Brad's shoes. I don't think actually as many people would, right? So I think, again, there's a lot of real estate investors I know that are very aggressive and bullish, and yet they still like to have their personal residence paid off. And that's more of like an emotional, personal choice rather than necessarily a financially optimized choice for them. And they're fine with it, whatever presumed opportunity cost is associated with making that decision versus trying to be completely financially optimized. Because obviously there's other stakeholders sometimes in our lives as well. But again, I would just be curious where other people's minds are. Because for me, I've got no issue. I don't really even have a principal residence right now. But if I did, I'd have no issue leveraging it up fully to go even invest in real estate right now. So if I was bullish on Bitcoin, I definitely wouldn't have an issue with it either. But there is a big aspect there with, can you cash flow if the market becomes irrational for a period of time. So this is often where, people that trade in stocks find themselves in hot water because the market can often afford to be irrational longer than we can afford to be rational. And so if you don't have a cash flow management strategy, if you don't have another income source, and I think Brad does have multiple income sources, so I'm sure he could manage his requirements or needs however he saw fit. But like for someone that was maybe like, I'm going to retire, I'm going to leverage my mortgage or leverage my house, go all in on Bitcoin, essentially the only way you're going to have liquidity events there is probably by harvesting or selling some of your Bitcoin in those moments, right? If we've got no other sources of income. So I just think it's really important people think that through. But again, I just found it interesting. I don't really have much else to say than I want to share that with people. But one other thing for anyone that wants to really improve your security, Brad went on like a tear on Twitter earlier this week as well, and like had a 18 or 20 part series on Twitter explaining security that seemed very thorough, that I literally just forwarded to multiple team members and was like, you're going to do this for me. So because I've actually been there when someone's got hacked. So back in, I think it was 2017, myself and Jeff Weibel, we went down and we're hanging out with our buddy Graham Stephan. And we were literally there when he got the phone call from his phone provider saying that like his shit essentially had been hacked. Or like we were there when he couldn't get into his phone, then realized the SIM card had been cloned and all that, all those crazy shenanigans. And like, that was such a huge pain in the ass. And so we immediately went and took some best practices. And it turns out it's a little bit harder in Canada. But I think that's the other side of the coin here, too, that for anyone that is going to go aggressively into Bitcoin, and this is something Brad shared on that tweet as well, is you could become a target, right? I think it's really important to make sure you understand the real consequences there, right? If you've got a wallet on your cell phone, can it easily be grabbed if you're going through a public Wi-Fi or something of that nature? Or, if you've got it on your computer, do you use that computer for essentially anything else other than those transactions with it? Or you keep it in cold storage and all the different sequences of events there? But I think what people need to understand just in general, I guess what I wanted to talk about here, and then looking forward to covering some of your stories, Tim, is just like, if you're going to move a significant portion of your net worth into this asset class, or alternatively, if you expect this to grow and balloon into a significant portion of your net worth, it's important that people understand that you need to take a lot of responsibility here. Because I think people with cryptocurrency and stuff, they sometimes get lulled into a false sense of security. So I know like earlier this week, there was a huge like KYC hack, right? Or whatever, where, was it 3 million individuals' accounts were shared and all that stuff was leaked. And I think people have this false sense of security in a lot of these exchanges or other places they keep their coins because they've been trained that from the government with the banking system, right? Like we've got insurance, we've got, checks and balances and all that. And a lot of people are, I think, kind of going into the Wild West without realizing that maybe the rules are a bit different there.
Yeah, there's no appeal to make to a higher power. One of the chapters that I've written is Bitcoin. You can ask for a refund, just to emphasize that you're not entitled to a refund. You might be able to ask for it. That's where that stops. I definitely agree that people who've written off or just dismissed Bitcoin for the last 11 years are going to have a rude awakening at the amount of homework that's involved with getting a good understanding to be able to put a reasonable amount of money at stake to try and participate in some of the upside. Because, for $10 or $100, just do it and try it. That's fine. But when you start to say 1 to 5% of your net worth, you're going to want to take some steps. And for folks like Brad, I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as what percentage of, like you said, is he all in or how close is he? And that's one of the weird things is that you may never know. Even a guy like Brad, who's been in the industry for so long, at many times has sold Bitcoin or has bought altcoins that have not performed as well as Bitcoin. So maybe he has significantly less Bitcoin than we all think. No one would ever know, not necessarily. So
yeah, I think that's just an interesting aspect of the Bitcoin community in general, right? Like because again, it's such a different world. So like real estate, influencers in that space, almost one of the ways you get influence is by flexing your units, right? How many buildings, how much cash flow, how much real estate, how many millions or billions assets under management is immediately what people want to know. Where with Bitcoin, it's almost the exact opposite. So for anyone at home that's maybe wondering, and I assume that the same happened to you, Tim, like, unfortunately, I lost any Bitcoin I had in a tragic boating accident. So I'm just chatting about Bitcoin, though I have none because of that tragic boating accident. And it's such an interesting environment, right? Where everyone loses their Bitcoin to these boating accidents.
Yeah, we love our boats. That's for sure. It's what's wild is that you've got that alternative in the custodial services, and then you can take possession of your Bitcoin and lose it forever. Like no one will ever be able to recover that Bitcoin, likely in our lifetimes with modern cryptography. It's just crazy.
And I think that's one of the things that kind of like actually probably slowed me down a bit. This is stupid. So complete discretion, guys. This is a really stupid confession here, but it's true. One of the aspects that probably would have got me into Bitcoin faster is if there was a little bit more competitive nature there. If I felt like I was stacking sats versus someone else, right? Like if it felt competitive almost, where like with real estate, I see someone flex that they just bought a new apartment building. I'm like, yeah, I need to work harder. I need to go like, where when I maybe attend Satoshi Sunday services and people are smash buying, I don't necessarily get the same sense of competitive nature to it. And so it's just like, that's more just human psychology that I'm discussing there rather than anything else. But just any general thoughts on that, Tim? Or like, was it once you kind of got into it, it was all about you and it wasn't necessarily like competing or trying to compare yourself to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got in early enough that making any progress on my stack of sats meant that I knew I was going to be doing well. But I look at the people that are information influencers in the community and think, I probably don't have as many Bitcoin as they do. And that therefore I don't have as much at stake in terms of advancing or promoting the ideas around Bitcoin. So, I mean, definitely, I think from like a healthy perspective, I mean, you're your only competitor. That's the thing to keep in mind. But you know what your score is based on the number of Satoshis you have, in that there will never be more than 21 million. So if you can make a dent in the, divide 21 million by say 8 billion people, you're going to get a fair share or better, when you work with math like that. And that might dovetail actually both of our little ideas here into the thing that I would like to share, which is a guy named NVK. He has a 3-letter Twitter handle. So if you can imagine his level of interest in terms of, and actually, if you're on Clubhouse, you probably see him around all the time. Rodolfo, great Canadian guy, creator of Bitcoin hardware wallets and other technology tools. But he's got a great website called bitcointreasuries.org. And if I can share it, I will.
Yeah, let's do it. And so, yeah, actually, like we were on CoinKite just the other day and bought some open dimes and stuff like that just to kind of play around with. So
good. So, you're saying about keeping score. Well, this is public and private companies' Bitcoin holdings and how they're doing. And the leaderboard is MicroStrategy, and they raised, they mortgaged the house. They levered that entire company against multiple billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin purchases, and have done a 2.4x on it in under 6 months, with 91,326 Bitcoins, representing nearly 0.5% of the entire supply. So, I mean, to me, that's incredible. What a giga chad there. The CEO, Michael Saylor, has some fascinating perspectives. I think we mentioned him in our first call. But he went from zero last May to being the leader on the board as of maybe it's really 3 months ago almost. So while it can take some time, and it helps if you have a primer, you've got a background that's ready to understand some of these ideas, you can do it quickly if you know what you're doing. But what I find really interesting is that, say, the top 3, the big ones that we've all heard of, well, I would say most folks have not heard of MicroStrategy, but Tesla and Square, three NASDAQ plays. I don't think there's really a major index, the S&P. None of these companies fit that bill. So that will still be an exciting announcement when we get an S&P 500 firm on the list. And there's some Canadian ones down here, Mogo Financing. So they offer financial products, fintech.
Interesting.
The first Canadian MasterCard, unfortunately, prepaid MasterCard that offers a Bitcoin reward. And, they've got a pretty piddly 50 Bitcoins, but they're playing. And so this list has been growing for the last year or so since NVK created it. And then you can also see the private companies, which are many of them like holding companies specifically for digital currencies so that people can trade them on markets. But down at the bottom here, this is only 1.3 million of all the Bitcoin, 6.5% or so. If you look at them all, they've done 40%. Again, probably since he created this, so that's not very long to get a 40% return. And we can still assume that there's a reasonable portion of Bitcoins that are lost to boating accidents, both real and imagined.
Well, yeah, like the interesting thing that I want to talk about I didn't even know this existed, so this is super cool. Thanks for sharing it. Yeah, the one thing I did want to bring up is I've seen articles that have said that as much as potentially 20% of the existing Bitcoin supply is thought to maybe be inaccessible. And that's fascinating to me because one, it's a little fuzzy, but two, it actually means that this is clearly a scarcer resource than that 21 million even necessarily implies. But the other thing that and I haven't been able to find a resource, so maybe you can help me out on this. Has anyone kind of projected or done a modeling on what they think that eventually lands on? Because I assume that the assumption is that as it becomes more valuable, people will truly lose less of it or truly not be able to access less and less of it, right? Like when someone now loses a wallet, probably rather than losing maybe dozens or thousands of coins, they're maybe losing a fraction of a coin that they can't get into. So have you seen anything where people have been theorized that, by the time all 21 million are out, only X% will actually be in true accessible form?
I've seen a few ideas about it. People saying as much as 5% every year are lost. But there's nothing that you can't know for sure. Like if I send my Bitcoin to deep cold storage and I don't intend to move them for 15 years, you won't know. There'll be no signal. It won't appear any different from any other Bitcoin. And there are people whose security strategy relies on not moving them ever or showing kind of where they might be type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's it's all of them are estimates. None of them are known for sure. There's this real jerk in the space who anticipates being able to use the law to free up some of the Bitcoin that has been lost. I don't even want to mention his name because he's just such an unpopular character in the space. But another Canadian was speculating, how many are lost. How can we find a good estimate? And, one of this person's associates chimed in to say, well, none of them are truly lost because we have a legal remedy to force the entire protocol to redistribute these lost coins. It doesn't ring true. And the guy is otherwise a fraud. So there's no need to discuss it any further. But the original Satoshi stake is about 1 million coins. And then a lot of the early holders would not have realized the importance because, when Bitcoin is not traded, there's no marketplace for it. There's no price. And therefore it's worthless and priceless at the same time, So it's just gone missing, or it's on an old computer or a hard drive, or it's been sent to, there's one address in particular. It's something like one do not send Bitcoin here, Bitcoin eater address, which is the actual way that Bitcoin address is created or phrased, which is not random. So therefore it is a dead end for Bitcoin. So the number of provably lost Bitcoin is extremely low, but the speculated number of lost Bitcoin is getting higher and higher every month.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, that aspect of it, right? Because again, it's something different than what you're normally familiar with when it comes to other financial assets, right? Like, oh, the government will just take it and redistribute it at some point in time, or put it up for auction, or whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, recently I just started reading the Bitcoin Standards, and really enjoying that book, and just kind of its introduction, and talking about how, again, like, until some of those first exchanges occurred, there really wasn't, like, it was more of almost a game, or just like a concept, than really like the financial instrument or asset that we may be associated with, like, today, as being very clear or obvious. So it is really interesting just to learn more about it. So I'd love to hear, Tim, any recommendations in regards to people we should look at following on Twitter? Because it seems like, to me, it seems like Twitter is one of the best ways for people to initially get to kind of stumble into this ecosystem. So, like, definitely Brad Mills, NVK. Who else comes? Michael Saylor. Who else comes to mind
Michael
when you
Saylor.
think about?
Peter McCormick. So he's the host of the What Bitcoin Did podcast. He is a marketer by trade. He's not a computer programmer or Bitcoiner. Well, sorry, he is a Bitcoiner, but he's not a developer or anything like that. But whoever he's interacting with will be likely somebody that you could follow, because they'll be somebody important. But the list is growing larger and larger every day. And I keep, again, stumbling upon people who have a material impact on Bitcoin that I was unaware of until I found them, sort of thing. So Stefan Livera would be another. And the other one was Richard Breedlove. Richard Breedlove did a series with Michael Saylor. It's very long form. I think it might be something like 6 or 8 hours altogether, but a very interesting take on history, which I know is one of your things that you like, Matt. The history of man's ability to channel energy, basically. And it's kind of fascinating the way they tie it into Bitcoin.
Yeah. And one account I wanted to mention for everyone is there's a cool Twitter account documenting Bitcoin, which just shares random, like, details and facts. And so one of the facts it shared today was I think Bitcoin's market cap, based upon that pricing, just surpassed the Canadian dollar M1 supply. So I think it was above 1.12 trillion. So it's just always interesting. Sometimes just stumbling into those random facts, because I know earlier today was also sharing, I forget, was it Liberty Village or whatever that very first exchange was, where the first couple, or Liberty Standard, that's what it was. Yeah. So yeah, there's a ton of resources out there, guys. I personally think Clubhouse is a cool way to kind of stumble in and kind of passively consume it, right? Like, you can be, shopping for your groceries or unpacking your groceries. You can be commuting, or you can just be sitting alone, scared in your basement during the third lockdown, however you want to spend your time. But, like, I think Clubhouse is a cool way to kind of get into the community. And it just, like, I find myself, like, stumbling into new personalities and then people to go look up on Twitter and kind of dig deeper into.
Yeah, the only reason I don't love Clubhouse as much as I thought I might is that there's no way to make it at 2x speed. I've got to consume people's ramblings rather than
it can be so hit or miss, man. Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't run out of what I consider excellent podcasts or excellent audiobooks, which I can consume at my pace anytime, asynchronously, without having to be tuned in at the right time. But I do keep hearing that there continues to be great new ideas coming out of Clubhouse. So if that's what you're into, that's great too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, appreciate you jumping on, Tim. Appreciate everyone jumping in the comment section. Turns out this was actually a little bit more popular than our normal crypto stuff. So that's cool to see. And appreciate Batman 911 was sharing some of his recommendations for follow. And Caliphate corrected us that Tesla is on the S&P 500. And I think we'll definitely continue to see more companies trending in that direction. But it is interesting to see how quickly they were able to climb to the top of that list, right? That they could just kind of throw their weight around at the start of this year and make a big play into it. So there's a lot of interesting stories going on. PayPal announced earlier today, right? Some favorable Bitcoin news. So I think it's a really cool time, guys, to start learning a little bit more about this. I would really encourage you not to just blindly jump into it. Though I think it is a cool time to start researching that concept of maybe taking 1% of your assets and allocating it into Bitcoin in a safe and reasonable manner, which means like making sure you've got your own keys, all that good stuff, so that you've actually got control of those coins. Because again, I could see a lot of people initially getting hyped up, buying it and just having it sit there and not understanding the potential consequences of doing so. So just want to encourage everyone to take on those best practices. And we'll be back next Tuesday talking about more crypto, more Bitcoin, and all that good stuff. Appreciate it, Tim.
My pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And reminder, go support Louder with Crowder, because YouTube's not going to support him. So thanks, guys. And we'll see you in the next video.